Hey 7th grade, here are the notes from our lesson today. Please be sure to pause this video and copy down what you see on your screen before you continue. Alright, so let's start with this first one. I'm going to zoom in here. We're starting with equations with fractions. So the first thing I need to do is identify my constant, which is 1/2, and get rid of that. So subtract 1/2, subtract 1/2 to each side of the equal sign. On this side, I'm left with a -5, 6x. And on this side, I need to say 3/4 minus 1/2. Well, I need to convert this to 2/4 so that I have common denominators. And now I can subtract. 3 minus 2 gives me 1, and the 4's stay the same. My second step is to let me get my pen here. My second step is to multiply by the inverse of this number, -6/5. This cancels out. I'm left with x. And on this side, I can cancel. 6 and 4 are both divisible by 2. This becomes a 3. This becomes a 2. And don't forget, this negative is still here. So when I multiply straight across, I have 3. And on the bottom, 2 times 5 gives me 10, and I still have that negative. So now let's look at a similar problem, but now we're going to focus on the inequalities. So this is similar to an equation. We treat it the same way. So first I need to identify my variables. I have an x and an x, and I want to put them together. I also have a constant here, which I can get rid of right away. So let's get rid of that constant, -5 on both sides. And again, we're just treating this inequality sign as if it were an equal sign for the point being. Okay, so let's get back to it. So 20 minus 5 becomes 15. Keep the sign. And x minus 1/3 x. Well, I can do that in my head. It's going to be 2/3 x. Now we need to use the multiplicative inverse on both sides of the inequality. These cancel out, x. Keep our sign, and on this side, because we're multiplying, we don't need common denominators. It doesn't look like I can cross-cancel anything too easily. So 15 times 3, that's going to give me 45, and my 2 stays as the denominator. There's one final step I could do, which is to create a mixed number. So I would ask myself, how many times does 2 go into 45? Let me bring down my sign here. And if I know my multiplication, I can say 2 times 22 gives me 44, and 45 is just 1 away. So as a mixed number, I would have 22 as my whole number, and 1 as the numerator and 2 as the denominator. Either of these answers are acceptable on your homework, the mixed number or the improper fraction. All right, moving on. I'm going to refocus here. So these top two problems had to deal with fractions. The bottom two is similar but with decimals. So let's zoom in to this first problem over here. And again, if you need to pause and write this down, do that first. Okay, so before we start, let's notice a few things. Here we have a constant. Here we have our variable. And so we want to get rid of our constant first. So let's subtract 5 and 14/100 from both sides of the equation. This will cancel out and drop down the equal sign. So the only thing left on this side is going to be 8/10 m. Make that decimal point a little bit bigger for you guys. And if you know your integer rules, you know that when you're subtracting, you basically just find the difference of these two numbers. So I'm going to line up my decimals over here, doing my work off to the side. I can even add a 0 here to just kind of keep me on track. So 4 minus 0 is 4. 1 minus 3 I need to borrow. 11 minus 3 gives me 8. Drop down the decimal. 4 minus 2 is 2. But we need to remember that the 5 over here had the greater sign. This was the greater symbol. So negative 5 and 14ths is bigger than 2 and 3/10. So we're going to keep the negative sign because it's bigger. So knowing that, this is going to be negative. So bringing it back over here, we have negative 2 and 84/100ths. Now the last step is to divide out, keep the variable by itself, and what we do to one side, we do to the other side. So again, we're going to need some space to work off to the side. And let's do this. I'm going to move this over here. So we have our division symbol. On the inside, we have 2 and 84/100ths. On the outside, we have 8/10ths. Remember, with decimals, you need to move it one place over so that the divisor is a whole number. And I like to bring up the decimal right away so I don't forget. Okay, 8 goes into 28 3 times, gives us 24. We have 4 as a remainder, bring down the other 4. 8 goes into 44 5 times with 40. Sorry if you can't see that. Subtract down, and we have 4 as a remainder. And if I bring another 0 down, 40, then that goes in 5 times. And don't forget that this was negative. We had a negative here. We still have a negative here. So our answer is going to be negative. So my answer is negative 3 and 55/100ths. All right, so this last problem with decimal inequalities actually involves some new rules. So we're going to leave that off for today. We will come back to this later. But these 3 problems will give you enough information to do your homework tonight. Remember, odds only for the worksheet. All right, see you guys tomorrow.